Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be here at VAVAC. VAVAC is a legend in the community, and it was a real privilege. When I got asked whether I would want to come here, I jumped at the chance. So I'm really thrilled to be here with you. I want to talk to you about not only fair use, but how much fair use, the use of fair use has changed. Because it's important for you to understand that at this point, fair use is industry standard. So it's not something that you need to think that you're very far out about. So what is fair use? Fair use is when you can lawfully use unlicensed material. And it is bounded, it is limited, but the limitations are easy to understand. The beauty of fair use is that it's very flexible, it's adaptable to new circumstances, and it is at this point something that other jurisdictions in the world, including the UK and Australia, are looking at with some longing because they believe that it is a part of copyright law that has led the United States to be innovative in the digital environment. This is something that is, we used to talk about fair use as a gray area. It is no longer a gray area. It's very clear what it means in the law. And the reason why is that judges have made it clear what fair use is. If you wanted to actually take a look at one decision, I would recommend two decisions. One is the Bill Graham decision. It's a decision about use of Fillmore posters for a biography of the chronology of the Grateful Dead, and the Google Books decision, which just came out. But if you did not want to read legal cases, you could just take a look at the two questions that judges are now asking, which is transformativeness. Transformativeness does not mean that you dicked with the material. It does not mean that you solarized it. It does not mean that you turned it into a different color. What it means is that you used it in a different way than the way that it's in the market. And the second question is, so was your use of the amount of the material appropriate to the first question, which is what are you doing with it? Is it appropriate to the use that you are now putting it to? Sometimes the amount that you are taking is 100% and it's appropriate. If you're taking a photograph and you want to represent what that photograph represents, you may need to take 100% of it. If you are sampling, if you're showing how a certain rock song imitates or carries forward a beat from a soul or a gospel song, you don't need both songs in their entirety. You need to represent that beat in both of them. So the amount you take, it matters, and it matters in terms of, not in any abstract way, not in 400 words, 30 seconds, any of these like bogus number things that you've been told. Those are all fiction. What the amount you take is dependent on is what are you trying to do that is different from the market purpose of the original. Yeah, you had a question? Oh, okay. Please feel free to interrupt me if any of this is not really clear, because we are going to speed talk through this, and when we're done, you are all going to be fair use experts, because it's that easy to become a fair use expert. Seriously? And then we are going to go to the clips, and you guys are going to make the judgment. So, great time to listen up. Okay, so these are the two questions. Are you using this for some other purpose than why it's on the market? If you are playing this song because you love this song and you want to show everybody this song because you love it, but you don't feel like you have to pay for it, that would be infringing. If this song was captured in the background, if this song was being used to illustrate something, if this song was being used as a demonstration of the sound of the historical moment, that would be different. That would be a different purpose than the reason why the song was originally put forward. How much did you use? Did it match that purpose that you have? So those are the two questions. Then they also say, well, what goes on in this field? The reason they ask that is because they can't help asking that, because all uses of copyrighted material are cultural expressions in some way. And they come out of community practice in some way. So knowing what communities think is okay actually does matter to judges. So here's why, although judges love it, people are worried. Because, like, if you get it wrong, there are potential penalties. I will tell you that this middle question, will I get sued? There are very, very serious penalties, in theory, for infringing on copyright. Those penalties are very rarely invoked. They're never invoked at the high level. Nonetheless, when you get the letter saying, the cease and desist letter saying, we could sue you and we could collect up to, it's a scary number, okay? So like that's something, but if you want to know what reality looks like, it's the third question. The third question is what really gets most people. They're like, is this what everybody else is doing? Am I going to look funny? Am I going to get in trouble? Is my broadcaster going to be upset? Is my lawyer going to tell me it's not good? Am I jeopardizing the distribution of my film because I can't get it out? So here's what happened in 2005 with the question of when can I employ fair use? Everybody looked just like that. Yes, they did. And as a result, they generally censored their decision to employ fair use because they weren't stupid. Insurers were saying, well, we don't really insure for fair use. We don't know what the standards are. And lawyers were saying, you asked me to keep you safe, I'm keeping you safe. Better safe than sorry, let's just license everything. And broadcasters were like, no, we'll share your liability, and we don't know what the dangers are either, so we won't do it. And then filmmakers, through 5 organizations, got together, and BAVAC endorsed this document as well, got together and created this statement. And what it did was to identify 4 situations in which they commonly need to consider whether fair use is applicable and how they think about it. So here's the first one. If you are actually critiquing that particular piece of media. So I'm going to give you an example.
The image of scantily clad women is supposed to affirm some image of masculinity, the man as the Mac, as this, you know, sexually powerful, virile example of manhood.
So we gave you a slight smidgen of Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes. The whole movie, the movie is like 95% clips from hip hop songs and hip hop videos, demonstrating this historical evolution of misogyny in hip hop. What do we think? I just told you what were the 2 questions you would ask about fair use. Hip hop, appropriate employment of fair use or infringing? Who says appropriate? Okay, who says infringing? Why are we saying appropriate? He's commenting directly on those videos. And other people he has interviewed are commenting directly. And all of his clips are chosen specifically to illustrate the point he wants. So why were those videos made? They were not made to reveal misogyny in American culture, right? They were made to entertain people and sell the music. So he's doing fine. And when he made that movie, it was in 2005, and everybody said, that's a movie that'll never get on television. My God, it's 95% copyrighted material, and it's music, and it's hip hop. So where do you think it got shown? Now, we have people here from the organization it was shown, so they can't vote. Where do you think it was shown? Oh, it says right here? Never mind. Okay, ITVS, public TV. That's right. Okay, here's another situation where filmmakers typically have the question, can I employ fair use? I'm quoting copyrighted materials of popular culture to illustrate an argument or a point. Well, fair use is eligible there. I really want you to take a look either at your device or the document to see what the limitations are, because the limitations are the key. They're what make it clear how you define transformative and how you define enough. So that's what you really want to look at. But I want to show you an example of somebody who was using a copyrighted work to illustrate a point.
Cries and Whispers is like no movie I've seen before, and like no movie Ingmar Bergman has made before. It envelops us in a red membrane of passion and fear, and in some way that I do not fully understand, it employs taboos and ancient superstitions to make its effect. We slip lower in our seats, feeling claustrophobia and sexual disquiet.
So what's the copyrighted material there? Actually, I think, and this is tricky, I think Cries and Whispers was actually used in the video under a publicity license. And I believe, although I'm not sure, that this is a clip from a TV show that he made. So the clip would be a TV show that was using licensed material. But if I'm right, the fair use, and this is an interesting point about fair use, if you are fair using that material from the TV show, the fair use carries over to everything in it. Got it? So if you were licensing it, you'd be going through a long, elaborate process where you'd be going back to the original. You'd be looking at the TV show, whatever that TV show was called. What was it called? It was the public TV show where Gene Siskel and... Can't remember. But you would then, if you were licensing it, you would have to license the TV show, then you would also have to license the clip from the movie, and then you would probably be going back to the actresses. But if you are fair using it, none of those contracts carry over to you. Everything in that clip you will be fair using.
I have to ask a question.
Yeah.
Who imposed the questions on the image? Was that part of the TV show? Did the director of the film?
I believe that what Steve James, the director of the movie Life Itself, which is about Roger Ebert, did was to put those words on the screen, not only to make it clearer what he said, but because he was then commenting on the way that Roger Ebert was a critic. And he wanted to make it perfectly clear that these were Roger Ebert's words, and also because if you have what is known as a sleepy judge, if you have somebody who's not paying a lot of attention, you want to make clear that you understand this is somebody else's material, and the reason that you're making people pay attention to it is these words on the screen that you're drawing attention to.
We had actually done that in color adjustment, but I found out, I was informed later that we're not.
Do you want to just grab a mic so that?
No, Paul, I can speak louder.
Well, no, the problem is I think they're recording, so I think you want to make sure that it's. So introduce yourself.
Introduce myself and curtsy.
Vivian Kleinman, producer of a documentary called Color Adjustment, directed by Marlon Riggs. We relied heavily on the fair use doctrine in 1991. But I understood afterwards that the text that we imposed on acquired material was a no-no, and that we were not supposed to alter the image whatsoever. We had to show.
I have a deep expertise in Section 107 of the Copyright Act. You move me over to Section 108, not so much. But I know of nothing that would stop you from creating greater clarity by putting words on the screen.
Good to know.
There was, at the time that you made color adjustment, there was a lot of ambiguity and lack of clarity around fair use that has been really synthesized into a coherent judicial interpretation. So I commend you for, in 1991, being gutsy enough to use it at all, because in 1991, a lot of people weren't, because they weren't really sure what it meant. It was only codified into law in 1978, and in that next decade, it was wildly misinterpreted by judges and other people. And it was in 1990 when fair use became much clearer, partly as a result of a very smart law journal article written by a judge, Pierre Laval, who happens, by the way, to also be the guy who just this last year wrote the Google Books decision, and wrote it extremely clearly, as if he were underlining for us the 2 points I just made of what are the 2 ways to argue fair use, so that it would not just be a decision on Google Books, but it would be a decision that everybody could use to understand what fair use is. So here's another situation that filmmakers often encounter. They're capturing copyrighted media content in the process of filming something else. Who has had that experience? Okay, yeah, and what was yours?
A film being worked on that hasn't been released yet locally. The sound mixer was working on it, and it's being used in the context of describing his work.
So you're filming this person doing his work, and there's sound in it because he's working on this material.
Sound and image on the screen.
Right, okay. So you're capturing this, and you're telling the story of this person working, and this person's work involves copyrighted material, happens all the time. You might also have a situation where you're filming somebody's wedding and they're playing some popular music. You might have a situation where you're filming teenage girls, and like if teenage girls ever did anything without surrounding media, you know, this situation occurs all the time. So here I'll give you an example of somebody who used fair use in this situation.
I'm a celebration,
Me and my wife was looking for a house. I didn't want the kids to grow up and really experience the things I've experienced all my life. We way out here, man. Way out yonder, man.
So what do we think is the copyrighted material? The music in the background, right? And what's the point of having the music?
It's a setting for this man's reality.
It's the setting for this man's reality. Very well said. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it is. They're cheerleaders, and he's sitting there. This black man who used to live. We see where he used to live. He's moved here, and this is like a foreign country to him. And he's sitting in the bleachers watching these cheerleaders doing these routines, and he's talking about what it means to him to be there. Yeah, and that's uncontroversial. Okay, so then the fourth common situation is using copyrighted material in a historical sequence. And in every one of these situations, I really want to encourage you to take a look. Vivian has this whole thing memorized, but the rest of you might not have yet committed it to memory. And the limitations are absolutely essential. You don't want to say, oh, I can always use copyrighted material in a historical sequence. You want to know what the limitations that your fellow filmmakers agreed were important to consider, because the power of this document is the power of consensus. It's that when you make a decision, you're not making a decision just for you. You're making a decision based on what senior members of your field thought was a reasonable way to make this judgment. And so you're standing with the field. So let me show you an example of using historical information in a sequence.
Carried the Republican Party to the White House, as Lincoln said to a nation far more divided than ours, "We are not enemies, but friends."
What does it mean, this 200th anniversary? And is this man a story that we tell children? Or is he more complicated than that? I know that there have been voices in the African American community that say he was not the great emancipator, he was an ultimate politician. But I've always been very much in the camp that this was a good man.
So there we have a situation where it's not just one piece of, this is a whole collage of copyrighted material. And some of it, by the way, is public domain, some of those older pictures, but some of it is copyrighted material. So it's images, it's newspapers, it's magazines, it's clips of Obama, which was taken from a commercial broadcast, and they're compiled because Why? What's being accomplished in that scene?
Creating the impact of Lincoln and his cultural impact of Lincoln and for the anniversary that he's talking about in the film.
Yes, so he's saying, like, there's been a lot of different opinions about Lincoln. So you've got a lot of different images of Lincoln. You've got, like, the Lincoln Memorial, like, he's been marbleized, and you've got Ebony saying he was a racist. So you've got lots of different images, and then you end up with Bill T. Jones's judgment. So that was in 2005 that those filmmakers wrote this statement in those 4 categories. What's going on now? First of all, we know because we did this survey, and if you're one of the people who submitted responses in this survey, we have to thank you, because more than 500 people did, but not everybody's responses were complete or adequate to be used. So we got 489 usable responses, and that is a lot of people to take time out on their cell phones while they're on a shoot to answer a survey. And what we asked basically was, is it different now than it was in 2005? We know what it was like in 2005 because we asked people in 2005. So instead of all those puzzled faces, what we now heard again and again was like, of course, why wouldn't I? 70% of the people who answered the survey said that they were very confident, they understood what fair use was. 70% ranked it either absolutely necessary or very useful for freedom of speech. These were some of the words that people used to describe it. And here's the important thing. 5% of the people said broadcasters did not accept my fair use claims. And those people were universally people whose experience of the not accepting the claims was before 2005. So if you assert this right, broadcasters are going to say yes at this point. Insurers overwhelmingly accept the fair use claims. We know this actually from the insurers themselves. There's only 5 insurers of errors and omissions in this country, and they all advertise explicitly that they accept fair use claims as part of their way of competing with each other.
So you're saying with the accompaniment of an attorney's letter approving and reviewing material as being fair use?
Yes, the lawyer. They want a lawyer to look at it and say that you made the right decision. The lawyer used to have to make a judgment that said, yes, I personally believe that this is fair use. And in a situation where nobody really understood how fair use was interpreted, that was much harder to get. That letter was really hard to get. Very few lawyers wanted to put their career on the line for you. It's a lot easier to write a letter that says, my client's use of this material accords with industry practices and best standards as established by the 5 major national organizations in 2005, et cetera. So what the lawyer is now writing is a letter that says, my client's use of this material accords with the documentary filmmaker's statement. It's a much easier letter to write. It's almost boilerplate. We also said, have you lost money because other people fairly used your material? Overwhelmingly, people said no. The people who did not say no said things like, the intern ran away with a hard drive. And that is not fair use. Just want to make that perfectly clear. However, there's still some learning to do, because people reported again and again that they were insecure about their own judgments, and that they often had made a decision to just not use stuff or to clear it because they thought that it might be, they just weren't sure. And very few people, does anybody know what the DMCA is here? Oh, you are good. Say it loud, say it proud.
Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Digital Millennium Copyright Act is an act that I sincerely hope at some point will be either reformed or repealed. It's an act with many clauses that have many negative effects on the digital creative environment. But one of them says that you do not have the right to break encryption on a DVD or Blu-ray or anything like that. It does have this little clause in it that says every 3 years you can go to the Copyright Office and ask for an exemption. Documentary filmmakers have done that. In fact, Kartemklin Films took the lead in going to the Copyright Office and saying, documentary filmmakers need to break encryption because they need to employ fair use. And the law explicitly says, even if you employ, or you're going to employ fair use, you cannot break encryption. And so they actually showed the Copyright Office that you cannot produce broadcast quality documentary unless you're going to break encryption. And the Copyright Office for the last three-year cycles has agreed that filmmakers have the right to break encryption. So all that breaking of encryption that you thought was illegal, you're fine. Spread the word. Okay, so what do we now do now that fair use is established? BAVAC members need to tell other people that fair use is the industry norm. Okay, so let's go test our knowledge. And this information, this PowerPoint has been shared with BAVAC, and you'll be able to get it as well. Thank you all for coming. It's amazing to know so many creative and wonderful people.